In a place where the trees grow taller than the sky, and the moonlight dances on leaves like silver dust, there is a silence older than time itself. The jungle breathes softly here. Slow winds, warm earth, and the quiet whispers of stories passed from grandfather to child by the glow of a crackling fire. They say that deep inside this forest, beyond the winding paths and the singing frogs, lives something strange, something forgotten, something waiting. A creature with 8 legs, eyes like shiny stones, and a name that travels on the wind. J'ba Fofi, the giant spider of Congo. No one knows where it came from. No one knows when it first arrived. But some say they have seen the web, a great white net stretched across the trees, strong enough to catch more than birds. And so the elders say, walk quietly, listen carefully, and never stray from the path. If you like stories like this one, soft and mysterious, like footprints in the dark, you are welcome to stay. You can subscribe gently, like a leaf landing on water, so that each new story finds you, like a whisper in the night. Tonight, we tell the tale, not to scare you, but to remember, to wonder, and to ask, what still walks beneath the leaves? The forest was never truly silent. Even when the sun went down, even when the birds stopped singing, the jungle kept breathing. It sighed through the tall branches. It hummed beneath the moss and roots. Every tree had a story. Every shadow held a secret. If you listened long enough, you could almost hear them speak. Leaves brushed against one another, like pages turning in an invisible book. Frogs croaked in the distance, soft, steady like drums in the dark. The air was thick with the scent of wet earth, old bark, and the slow perfume of blooming flowers that only opened at night. Sometimes a sudden sound would cut the calm, a snap of a twig, a hush of wings, or the soft hiss of something moving low to the ground. The people who lived near this forest did not call it empty. They said it was alive. And not just with animals, not just with birds and monkeys, and the little glowing eyes that peeked from the leaves, but with something older, wiser, and maybe watching. Children were warned. Do not walk into the trees alone. Do not run off the trail even for fun. Do not follow strange paths, no matter how beautiful they seem. They were told to listen, not with their ears, but with their skin. Because when danger came in this place, it came slowly, quietly, wrapped in silk. And always there were the whispers. They came late at night, when the fires had burned low, a gentle creaking from the canopy, a low groan from a branch that no one had touched. Some said it was the wind. Others weren't so sure. The trees in this part of the world were old, some older than cities, some older than memory, and they had seen things they did not forget. People spoke of strange moments, a shadow where no shadow should be, a sudden stillness, as if the forest was holding its breath, webs across the path, thick as rope, shining in the moonlight like silver threads. And the strangest thing, sometimes there were no birds, no frogs, no sound at all. Just the breath of the trees and the feeling that something was near, not evil, not angry, just present, waiting. And so the people whispered, because in this jungle you don't shout a warning. You don't speak of the old things loudly. You tell the stories softly, like a prayer carried by smoke, because the trees are listening, and maybe so is something else. It always began the same way, a quiet path, a soft night, and the pale glow of the moon slipping through the cracks between the leaves. The jungle trail was narrow, but many had walked it. Hunters, gatherers, travelers on their way to the river. They knew its twists. They knew its sounds. But sometimes the path would simply stop, not because it ended, but because something had covered it. A web, but not like the webs we know, not the gentle lace that hangs in gardens, not the fragile threads that catch morning dew. This was something else. It stretched from tree to tree, thick as a fisherman's net, longer than a house, strong enough to stop a grown man in his tracks. And it shimmered. Not white, not gray, but something in between, like moonlight made solid, like silver turned into smoke. The first to find it was a boy, no older than 12. He had gone to check his father's traps. When he didn't return, the village sent others to look. They found him sitting on the ground, staring upward, silent, not hurt, not crying, just staring. Above him, the web. It hung like a curtain of ghost hair, gently swaying in the night breeze. And in its center, something was moving. Very slowly, a long, soft shape curled into the middle, 8 long legs folded tight, a body like a mound of earth, and eyes. Too many to count, glistening still but not blind, watching. The searchers said nothing. They carried the boy back, and for many nights after, no one walked that trail again. But that wasn't the only web. Others began to appear, high in the trees, across small streams, even across doorways in abandoned huts near the jungle edge. And they were always empty when touched, as if something had just left, or was just about to return. The people began to whisper again. They said, "The spider is awake." They said, "It weaves at night when no one is watching." They said, "If you touch the thread, it remembers your scent." Some tried to burn them. The fire would catch quickly, too quickly, and the smoke would smell strange, like sweet leaves and something darker. One man said the flames turned green, Another said the web grew back the next night. No one could explain it. No one wanted to. And still the webs kept coming. They were warnings, perhaps, or invitations, or traps. No one could say. But everyone knew this. Something big was out there. Something that did not want to be seen, until it did. And when the moonlight was right, and the wind was still, you could almost see the web stretch and breathe. Like a living thing, like a gate to somewhere deeper. And the legend began to grow, thread by thread. In every village, there is a name that people lower their voices to say. A name connected not to a spirit or a god, but to someone who saw something and never truly came back. This story is about one such man. His name was M'Bale, a tall man with strong shoulders, hands like stone, and eyes that once laughed easily. He was a hunter, a good one. Quiet feet, sharp aim, and the kind of patience that only comes from listening to the forest, day after day. One morning he left with 2 other men. They were headed deep into the jungle, far beyond the usual paths, where wild pigs and large antelope still wandered. They said they would return in 3 days, but only one man did. M'Bale came back on the 5th day, his clothes torn, his skin marked with long, thin scratches, his eyes different. They no longer laughed. He did not speak at first. He sat outside his home, staring at nothing. He would not eat. He would not sleep. The village elders called to him gently. He would not answer. But late that night, as the fire burned low, M'Bale began to whisper, and the words he said have never been forgotten. He told of the journey, how the forest had grown strangely quiet on the 2nd day. No birds, no insects, only wind. They had come across a strange patch of land, where the trees grew in a perfect circle. At the center, a small clearing covered in soft white threads, so fine they looked like mist, but thick enough to hold the dew. One of the men stepped forward, reaching down to touch it. That's when they heard the sound. Not loud, not sharp, but deep, like breath, rising from the ground. Then, movement. From the edge of the trees, something began to crawl out. Slow, heavy, deliberate. 8 legs, longer than spears. Hair like coarse brush. Eyes, not glowing, but reflecting the light, like dark water catching a candle. M'Bale said it made no sound. It didn't growl. It didn't scream. It only moved. Closer and closer. The first man ran. M'Bale turned to follow, but the other froze. The spider didn't chase. It didn't need to. M'Bale said he looked back once and saw the creature lower its body and cover the man with silk, like a mother tucking in her child. Slow, tender, final. He ran. He ran without thinking, without knowing where his feet were going. He did not sleep that night or the next. He ran until the trees began to look familiar again, until he saw smoke from his village. When the elders heard this story, they said nothing. They gave Mbale a drink made from herbs. They left food by his door. They lit fires and whispered old songs. But none of that brought back the two men. No search was sent. No more hunters went that way. The forest had made its choice. Mbale never hunted again. He lived quietly, spending his days carving wooden animals and watching the jungle from a distance. Some say he never recovered. Some say he lost his mind. But others, the old ones, they say he saw the truth. Not a monster, not a demon, but something ancient, something sacred, something that lives where no human belongs. The jungle is thick, not just with vines and roots, but with layers. There is the ground, where people walk, where frogs hop, where ants carry leaves bigger than their bodies. Then, above the ground, there is the world of branches, tangled and high, where monkeys swing and birds nest, where the sun barely touches the dirt. But above even that, there is a secret floor. A roof made of green, a hidden bridge of trees woven tight with leaves, so thick that even the rain takes its time to pass through. This place is called the Canopy, and sometimes at night people say they hear something walking there. Not a bird, not a monkey, not a snake, something heavier. It happens just before sleep, when the fires burn low, when the last story has been told, when the air is thick and warm. First, the sound is faint, a distant thump, then another, like someone walking, step by step, above the trees, not running, not jumping, just walking, heavy, slow, measured, thump, thump. At first, people tried to explain it. They said it was falling fruit. They said it was the wind. But the pattern was too steady, the weight too real, and sometimes it came in circles. Around the village, above the roofs, never fast, never loud, but always felt. Children lay in their hammocks, eyes wide open, listening to each step like a drum beat on the ceiling of the world. Some said they saw branches sway in the moonlight, without wind, as if something tall and careful was passing above. Once a man climbed a tree, thinking to catch a glimpse. He went up with a torch. He never came down. All they found the next morning was his torch, still burning, resting gently on a wide leaf, far too high for human hands. After that, no one climbed any more. People began building their homes lower, closer to the ground. They hung charms in their rafters, woven bundles of feathers and bone, painted with red sap, meant to guard against things that walked in silence. But the steps still came. Even the animals felt it. Dogs would whimper without reason. Goats refused to leave their pens at night. Birds would vanish, only to return days later with missing feathers or strange webbing stuck to their wings. And sometimes, in the very early morning, before the light turned gold, you could look up and see a long shadow pass between the leaves, not flying, not falling, just moving, watching, waiting. What kind of creature walks not on earth, but above the trees? What kind of spider lives so high no one dares to follow? In every village, there is one person who remembers what others forget. An elder, a keeper of words, a voice like dry leaves, and a gaze that stretches far into the past. In this village, that person was called Maku. He did not walk quickly. He did not speak often. But when he sat beside the fire and the sparks danced into the night air, people gathered. They sat in a circle, young and old, silent and waiting, and Maku would begin. His voice was soft, like smoke rising from wet wood, but every ear listened. He said, "Long ago, before the white roads, before the shining lights, before the world became loud, the forest was home to giants. Not the kind with 2 legs, not giants made of stone or muscle, but giants of stillness, giants of silk, giants with 8 eyes and patience longer than time. The J'ba Fofi, he said, was not a monster. It was a watcher, a keeper, a judge." He told the tale of the first people, how they lived close to the ground, building homes between the roots, sharing food with animals, walking barefoot so they could feel the earth's heartbeat. Back then, the spider walked openly. It moved with grace, with rhythm, with wisdom. People would see it pass between the trees, and they would bow their heads, not in fear, but in respect. It kept balance, Maku said, between what grows and what takes, between what hunts and what is hunted. When someone grew too greedy, took too many animals, cut too many trees, J'ba Fofi would come, not to punish, just to remind. A web would appear across their door, a single thread tied around their water pot, a shadow outside their hut, and they would understand. Enough is enough. It was not cruel, he whispered, but it did not forget. And then he spoke of the great night, a time when strangers came, with fire and metal and noise. They did not bow to the spider. They laughed at the stories. They chased it, shot at it, burned its homes in the high canopy. And so J'ba Fofi went deeper, into the parts of the forest where no paths remain. It stopped weaving near villages. It stopped showing itself under moonlight. But it did not vanish. "No, no," Maku said, his eyes reflecting the fire. "It waits, not in anger, not for revenge, but for silence. For the world to become quiet again, for the trees to heal, for the songs to return. And when that happens, the old ones believe J'ba Fofi will walk once more, with no need to hide. He ended with a question, soft and slow. What if the forest still remembers? What if she still walks, not far away, but just beyond the sound of your voice? The children said nothing. The fire popped softly, and a breeze passed through the trees as if someone, or something, had just walked by. There is a path near the edge of the village. It is narrow, barely more than a trail. Few walk it now. But long ago it led to a little stream where children would play. They would chase frogs, float leaves like boats, and let the cold water run over their toes. That is where the story begins. His name was Tano, a quiet boy, soft footsteps, eyes full of wonder. He liked to follow insects, not to harm them, just to watch where they went. Butterflies, caterpillars, glowing beetles with blinking lights. One evening, just before dusk, Tano saw something strange. A beetle, bigger than most, its body glowing like a tiny lamp, drifting slowly along the path toward the trees. He followed. Not far, just a few steps. The forest was calm. The sky still held some light. The air smelled of river and leaves. But then, the mist came. Not a heavy fog, just a light, silver breath, rolling in from between the roots. It curled around his feet, slid along the path, and made the world quieter. He kept walking. The beetle was just ahead. Its glow steady, like it was leading him somewhere. He didn't hear his name being called. He didn't notice the sky darkening. He didn't see the first thread. It brushed his shoulder. So soft he thought it was a vine. But vines don't hum, and vines don't pulse. Some say he wandered too far. Some say the beetle wasn't a beetle at all, but a light meant to lead or distract. The villagers searched all night. They found nothing but a shoe resting gently on a stone. Not torn, not muddy, just placed, like someone took it off before sleep. By morning, the mist had cleared, and on the trail, something new appeared. Footprints, but not just two. Not child-sized, not barefoot, but many. Too many. Circling once, then vanishing into the forest. The elders did not speak. They burned sweet leaves. They sang low songs, and they told the mothers to keep their children close. The forest doesn't take without purpose, they said, but sometimes it remembers the old ways. Sometimes the children leave not in fear, but in curiosity. Not stolen, but invited. And when the wind is just right and the mist rolls in low, some say you can still see Tano, not lost, not sad, but walking softly beneath the trees, following lights that no one else can see. There is a moment each night when the world holds its breath. It comes after the last fire crackles, after the last voice fades, after even the owls stop calling. A stillness, not sleep, not silence, but something deeper, a waiting. The old people say that is when the forest becomes awake, not with sound, but with attention. It listens, it watches, and maybe, just maybe, it remembers. We think we are alone, lying under our blankets, surrounded by walls, tucked away from the dark. But darkness is not empty. It is full, full of breath, of movement, of soft things that have learned to wait. J'ba Fofi is one of them, not a monster, not a ghost, but a question. A question we keep meeting in different forms. What do we forget when we stop listening? What do we lose when we stop respecting? What returns when we finally go quiet? Maybe it is still there, not far, not deep, just beyond our comfort. A step behind your thoughts, a whisper outside your dream, the feeling of being watched that you can't quite explain. Some say that's just the mind playing tricks. But why does the mind always return to the same trick? To the same shape? To the same number of legs? And what if it's not a trick at all, but memory? The memory of something older than roads, older than fire, older than language. The memory of a creature that walked beside us, and then walked away when we stopped seeing it. But sometimes it comes back. Not for harm, not for noise, but for the ones who still wonder. And when the jungle is quiet again, when the trees are tall again, when the fires burn low and stories rise into the stars, maybe then we'll see the shadow move once more. Not to frighten, but to remind that not all who vanish are gone, not all who watch are cruel, and not all legends are lies. The fire is low now. Only a few embers glow, like sleeping stars upon the earth. The jungle has quieted again. The frogs rest. The leaves are still, and even the wind has found a place to lie down. You have walked far tonight, through shadow and story, through silk and silence. You've listened closely, and that matters. Because some stories are not meant to be told loudly. They are meant to be whispered, to be shared in calm voices when the moon is high and the world is soft. So if you are still here, if you've walked this whole path with us, thank you. Thank you for being quiet. Thank you for wondering. Thank you for believing, if only for a little while. If this story gently touched something inside you, press like, not with a bang, but like setting down a cup of tea. And if you wish to return when the next story begins, you can subscribe, softly like the forest remembers your name. And before you close your eyes, say goodnight to the jungle, to the wind, to the boy who followed the beetle, to the footsteps on the canopy, to the weaver in the trees. Say goodnight to J'ba Fofi. Maybe she's listening. Maybe she already whispered back. Sleep well. Until next time. You are safe here.